Hey everybody, welcome to our July. Josh says, learn Lightroom Live. See what I did there? You had me going the wrong way. Yeah, we're going to be talking about underwater photography, underwater editing today. We just had a Patreon group shoot where we did underwater. We shot mermaids. We're going to edit some of those photos here in just a minute. And so I just want to welcome y'all. Good evening. Hello, how is everyone? It's been quite the day here in Azullox land, dealing with photo club stuff, dealing with just a whole bunch. We had a big wedding we shot this weekend. I overshot it by about 2,000 photos, but it was my niece getting married, so I shot way too many photos. I think final count was something like 4,465 photos. That's too many. But there was a lot of really fun moments, a lot of high energy. So you're going to do just what that. So, you know, data management comes into play. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. So just trying to get all those photos imported and backed up to make sure that we're safe. We're going to keep those SD cards nice and locked up until everything is backed up. I think that's a good practice. So we're going to be talking, we're talking Lightroom today. Hey, Bill, I see you out there too. The buttons, double tag teaming over there. So yeah, let me flip over here just real quick, kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Look, I even made a presentation for y'all. I know. What's up, Dragon Lingo? So underwater editing, it's really a couple of problems that we have to deal with. Most of them are shadows and reds. Underwater reds are the first thing to go, and then how to deal with shadows. So kind of the four big things we're going to be talking about is how to get better clarity in your images, specifically in our, and then reds and skin tones, and then how to deal with blues and the water, and then lastly, how to deal with shadows and highlights. So just real quick, as we're going through this, I'll share this out if anybody wants to see it. But for clarity, I think shoot closer, right? Water isn't clear. We like to think it's clear, but it's not. Even in a pool, it's not clear. And so the further away you are, the more unclear water you have to shoot through, the less sharp your photos are going to be, which maybe you want it, maybe you don't. But just know that if you get closer and wider, the trade-off is you have to show more, especially if you're in a pool. If you're in an ocean, it doesn't matter. But if you're in a pool, maybe you're going to show things you don't want to show to get close and wide. So I kind of like to split the difference. I tend to shoot around 20 to 24 millimeters underwater, maybe up to 35. And then water has a magnification of 25%. And so a 24 underwater is really more like a 35 on land. So just know your trade-offs there. Also, if the models are wearing makeup, that makeup will come off and it'll add more particulate matter to the water. So generally, as the shoot goes on, if we're doing a long day of shooting and there's a lot of models wearing makeup, our water is going to get less and less clear. And then I think to think about, most pools that we shoot in are white surface pools or blue surface pools, and the sun is coming from above us. And so it's like shooting a product shot, right? But we're shooting kind of from the back way. We're shooting back toward the light. So that can be a little bit different as well. And then as far as reds, I'll show you this more, but red is the first color to disappear. Orange is the second color to disappear. Skin tone generally are red and orange. So that becomes our problem. So I'm going to show you how to boost individual luminance and saturation channels. And this will be helpful for other types of editing, but this is a good example. So we'll brighten the reds, we'll darken the blues, and we'll add more saturation to our reds and oranges. And then for the water, we're going to use some of that HSL panel. And then we're going to definitely use some gradient and radial filters to add blue back into the water, right? We want to suggest that they're not in a pool, maybe that they're more deeper blue ocean water. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today. And then shadows and highlights, right? We're shooting generally up toward the sun. And so we're shooting the shadow side of our subject generally. And so then how to deal with shadows and highlights. So yeah. Matt says, was that 25% for dome or flat port or both? Hey, Matt, yeah, great question. For the flat port, especially, it magnifies. The dome helps reduce that magnification. I don't know to what extent, but it does. And you can tell that because when you use a dome, you can do the split level view, right? So we had on this big dome port, And so if we split the water, we don't have as much magnification. But if you had a flat port and you try to do a split level, the body will look like it's like 25% closer, and it looks like a shrunken head. And that's kind of a fun, probably not a flattering view. So yeah, the dome port definitely helps reduce some of that magnification for underwater. So yeah, good question, Matt. Thanks for jumping in, man. And then, lastly, color grading can help. If we get to that, we'll get to that. That's kind of the last part where we can really play with the color response in shadows, midtones, and highlights. All right, let's take a look at a little bit of Lightroom. Okay. So here we are in Lightroom. And this is straight out of the camera. The only thing that I have done to this image so far is change the profile. What's up, Miguel? What's up, man? And so y'all probably heard me talk about profile a whole bunch. I don't want to get into it too much here, but I would recommend profiling your camera. I use a Color Checker Passport 2, which is made by X-Rite, and then there's a plugin. You take a picture of it, and then you can build your profiles. Your color response is going to be more accurate. It's going to be a better spot to start as a foundation to your images. I highly recommend color profiling. I don't want to talk about it today, though. Episode 2 of Learn Lightroom Live is all about profiling your monitors and profiling your cameras. If you want to watch that, I don't know how to do cards, but I'll point and pretend like I know. It'll be there later. No, it won't. I don't know how to do that. So that's the only thing I've done to this. So let's just kind of talk. I think it's always good when we're starting an image to say out loud what we like, what we don't like, and then let our hands kind of follow from our words, right? We're going to speak it into existence first. And so for this photo, quick trip. There's what it's going to end up looking like. Woo, very good. All right, let me minimize this so you don't have to look at it. Okay, so I think a couple things here. One, this is our model Beth, and we're at Patty's house. Thanks again, Patty, for hosting us. I love the sun rays coming in, right? So the water's from behind, and it's going, coming right over the model's head and kind of back into my camera. If you notice this ring here, I forgot to put on a reflective, a matte in front of my lens, and so that dome is getting a reflection back. So we're seeing the back of the dome reflecting the front of my lens. So we're getting a little double reflection. That's what this arc is here at the bottom. If you didn't know what it was, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but I know what it is. I'm kicking myself. There's a ring that you can get, a black ring that covers that, and I forgot to put that on there. Stupid me. Okay. So again, I think this is too green overall. I think the skin tone especially is too green. Right, if we look right at her midsection, at Beth's midsection there, it's very green. And we don't want green skin. We are not Aquaman. And so we're going to want to make the skin tone right. And then whatever happens to the blues will go from there. Okay. So the first thing that I would do is try to get a better white balance. All right. So we can use our dropper. Now, a little trick. If in the pool or wherever you're shooting, if there's a white, anything white, you can use that dropper to kind of drop in, and it'll get you closer. But right now let's look at daylight. So daylight, right, 5500 temp plus 10 red. That's not enough. So let's drag that eyedropper, and we're just going to drag it to the bottom here where there's sunlight hitting, and let's see what that does. Wow, look at the difference. It went from 5500 to 6500 in temp, but the tint went from 10 to basically 110. So it added 100 more units of red. Now, as I said a little bit in the pre-show, the big part of underwater is dealing with our reds and our blues, right? Skin tones, especially for people, is comprised of reds and oranges, and that is the color that goes away the most quickly underwater, which is why the water's blue. And so this blue in the water, it's there, but not enough. So that white balance, we're going to make it a little bit warmer and let those sun rays come in, maybe 7500. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring it up to like 120 on the reds. I'll adjust that as I go, but that's kind of a better starting spot. Now, if we hit the letter Y, we can see a before and after. Oh, that's the finished one. We can just jump back down here. So right, there we go. And here. So we're already starting to get a little bit closer. Oh, thank you, iStudio. And I kind of like that more. That's looking a little bit more like sunny skin. The skin is no longer that green color, especially if we look right there at the abdomen. So yeah, getting closer. All right. Now the skin tone, the exposure is pretty close, so we won't have to deal with that. Let's take down our highlights. If we look along this edge of her shoulders, especially on this arm here, those lights are really harsh. So we're going to bring all of the highlights down. There we go. Let's add some contrast. Maybe 20 just for now. We'll probably come back and add some more. Now, if we notice in our histogram up top, there's a whole lot of data missing from our midtone all the way down to our blacks. And so we can decrease our shadows a little bit, and then let's pull our blacks down just to kind of bring that tone curve nice and down back toward the left. So we get where it's kind of like a Milky Way photo in some respects, where we have a very narrow band in the exposure because there's so much cloudiness going on, and we really want to pull that histogram out to the edges. This is probably a little too much for right now. Let's come back to maybe like -20 for now. But yeah, we're really trying to pull that flat exposure and really bring it out to the edges. What's up, Steven? How's it going, man? Definitely want to bring up some vibrance. We're going to lose a lot of color information underwater. I would normally, on land, I would not go this high with vibrance, but here we're going to go up to 35. Dehaze, right? Dehaze is kind of built for underwater. It's meant to get rid of fog. It adds localized contrast. And so that's going to maybe like 15. Again, we don't want to go too crazy, but it is definitely going to make the photo a little bit more punchy, kind of bring in that area. All right. Now, we're looking at this photo now. I'm not going to get to the HSL panel just yet, but that's our kind of our second to next step. Quickly, I want to enable profile corrections, and I take off vignetting. I generally don't add the Lightroom vignetting. I usually just take it to 0, but I do like fixing the distortion. I was shooting at 21 mil, so there is definitely some distortion there. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up my noise reduction to 15 and 15. I was shooting at ISO 400 on a Canon 5D Mark IV, but I'm going to be pushing and pulling this photo a whole bunch, and so it's going to get a little noisy. So I just want to add maybe 15 to noise reduction. That's usually about all I want to add in Lightroom. And then if I need more, that's where I'm going to bring it into Topaz, denoise, most likely, if I need to go more than that. Okay. So let's come back and let's get this radial. So the top of this image now is too red, and I really want it to feel like sun rays are coming from the top. The bottom of this photo is still kind of too green. Down at the very bottom, it's nice and blue, but right here in the center, it's not blue water, it's green water. So let's fix that. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a graduated filter. Okay, just going to click on a graduated filter, and I created one called Dark Water. And it is -20 temp, -10 green, -0.5 exposure, and +20 contrast. So I'm just going to take that and drag up from the bottom, and look at how this water turns bluer. Ooh. Okay. Because we're adding more blue in. We could, and again, they're adjustable, right? So we could add more blue. Right. Oh, yeah. Let's go like -35. See how blue that's looking now? I'm liking that. And I want to take out a little bit of the red, maybe -20. Okay. I'm digging that a little bit more. Okay. Good. And so now this starts looking more like ocean water. All right. Now the top to me is still too red. This doesn't look like sunlight. It looks like Kool-Aid. So let's do another. I have one that I use a lot called Sunburst. I just call it Sunburst Grad, and it's +25 yellow, 0 on tint, 0.2 exposure, +30 highlights. So let's bring that down and just kind of give it that. Yeah, I want more orange and maybe a little bit less red still. And the reason we're doing less red, in our base a base adjustment, we added +120 units of red to kind of get our skin tones looking right. But in this case, and that's looking a little green now. Maybe that's a little too much. And that's a little too orange. A lot of Lightroom for me is going too far and then bringing it back. All right. But now I think the top of the water is more orange and less red. Would y'all agree? A little more orange, a little less red. Okay. Now, if we're looking here in the center, I think she's a little bit dark. And so I'm going to use another radial filter. And this one's just going to be a straight exposure. I just want to add like a third of a stop, invert to go to right to the center of my photo, just to kind of brighten right that nice center. My feather's 100, so it's very subtle, but it's just enough to kind of add in, kind of bring up her skin tone there. Maybe we'll add up a little shadows too, just to kind of brighten up her skin tone. Okay. Now, these sun rays are going to look really good if I add more clarity. So let's go ahead and add some clarity and kind of punch that up. It's really going to make them more defined. Yeah, now we're looking cool. And then maybe like +5 texture. Okay. Yeah, looking cool, huh? Looking like a file. So again, I'll take it all the way back to the beginning just to kind of see where we're at. See how green everything is. See how it doesn't pop. Again, this one isn't so bad. She's vertical, so the light's hitting the top of her shoulders. But a lot of times if she was swimming across, her back would be bright, her underside would be shadow. One of the cool things about shooting underwater, sometimes it's actually easier to shoot in a shallow pool because the floor, think of like a reflector for portraits. The closer the floor is to the light, the more bounce you're going to get and the softer the photos are. So in my neighborhood, we have a 3.5-foot pool, and it's actually very soft to shoot in there. It's a white floor, so that light barely goes to the water, it hits that floor, and it's already bouncing back up. Whereas this pool is like 10 feet, so that water's got much further to go before it hits the bottom, and it's really starting to die out by the time it comes back to the surface. Okay, so that was where we started, and now here we are. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to show you is HSL. Now, I use HSL a ton. I use it on land portraits. I use it on everything I do pretty much. I really like HSL. So what we can do here, first of all, I want to darken my blues. I'm in my luminous, so that just changes the brightness of each color pixel. So I'm just going to drag it to this kind of green area and just pull down a little bit. And I'm just going to drag down a little bit, but sample different areas that I want darker. And then I'm going to come to skin tone and the top of the water and just slowly pull up and make that brighter. So if you look, we ended up doing +24 orange, +14 yellow, then -20 aqua, -39 blue. I'm going to go ahead and raise up the luminance on the red channel as well to maybe like 15. Okay, and so that's really going to help brighten our skin tones and darken our water. And so that's going to add color contrast to really make our subject pop off that water, right? Where the skin tone is, skins are reds and orange, we want that brighter. Where the water is with blues and aquas, we want that darker. Okay, we can also come into saturation, and we could add more saturation to the reds and oranges. Again, that's where our skin tone is. We really want that to pop. If we wanted to, we could make the saturation of the blues, right? We could lessen it or brighten it. I kind of leave that alone for right now. This is just compensating for how much red and orange gets lost. So just adding like 20 units of saturation just to make sure that comes through. Okay. All right. What do we think so far? Big change? Big change. And what I hope you learn from this, A, to edit underwater photos, but B, I want you to understand that this is an extreme version of editing a portrait, but this water could very easily be a sky. And a very nice way to make the skin brighter is to raise the luminance of the skin and darken the luminance of the sky. And that's going to give you that automatic contrast where your subjects are going to pop off more against the screen. Okay? Yeah, big change. Big change. All right, let's take a look. Let's take a look at a different one. This is from the next day. So this is a different pool. This is here in Pflugerville. This is my friend Marissa. And I think the light here is much different. It was a cloudy day. We didn't have that direct sun coming in creating rays. It's a lot flatter light. It's a softer light because we didn't have that direct sun overhead, but also my settings were way brighter. I was probably like 3 stops more sensitive. So my ISO went from 400 to 1600, and my aperture went from 5.6 to f4. So I was 3 stops brighter to get the similar exposure here. So it was a much softer day. The other thing in this photo, I'm at 24 instead of being at 21. So just a little bit tighter, not too much, but just a little bit less distortion. And I think 24 is probably the sweet spot for me. I really enjoyed shooting at this focal length. I'm always kind of playing around. It had been 2 years since I shot underwater. And so I was forgetting things like bringing a trash bag so that I had all my something to put all my wet clothes in. So yeah. But this one looks a lot bluer to start. Instead of looking green, her skin is looking kind of blue and yellow. Okay, so here's the trick though. See these panels back there in the back, the vents and things? That's a good starting spot for our white balance, because I know they're white. Whoa, look at that. 2700 temp plus 150 red. That's too much. That's too orange. Let's go ahead and bring that down. Maybe something like 9,000. Again, it's maybe a starting spot, but maybe not perfect. Okay. So right, visually I said there was a little bit too much yellow and there was a little bit too much green. So if you see we add all that red into our temp, it's going to get us out of that green kind of sickly color. The other thing that red is going to do is really make the blues shine a little bit more. Right? If we took our greens all the way, see how that doesn't look so great. So yeah, usually around 100. 80 to 100 red is going to be a pretty good way. For a lot of underwater cameras like GoPros, they actually have a red intensifying filter that you put on to help counteract that that loss of red, to add that wavelength back in. Okay, so again, I'm just going to start by bringing my highlights down. If we look at our histogram, we can see that everything's really tilted up here to the high end. So let's go down maybe like 80. Her hair, I just want to raise the shadows just a little bit, maybe 25. But then I want to pull down those blacks to where it's just touching, right? That just almost clipping, but not quite. All right. So we're getting, right, again, we're pulling that expansion of the dynamic range, right? We're taking that tone curve and we're really making it to the edges, okay? Whites, I like popping my whites just to make the photo a little bit brighter. And there we go, right? We're kind of nice, even round numbers. There we go. Minus 80, plus 25, plus 25, minus 30. Yeah, we can add some dehaze, maybe like 10 this time. And again, that vibrance is going to go plus 30. Okay. If we see, we're actually in the shallow end here. It's maybe 6 feet deep here. And so that light is bouncing up on her underside a little bit more. If she had gone all the way to the deep end and was at this depth, we would be getting less and less light, right? Because the light has much further to come down and there's not as much of it to reflect up. Okay. But I like the action of the tail. I like that the way the water looks and all that. It's really fun. We'll add a little contrast, not too much. What's interesting underwater, you can subtract contrast or add contrast. It gives looks that maybe you wouldn't expect. Like minus 10 here actually looks pretty good. I'll just stay there. All right, so again, I'm going to come down to saturation. Let's go ahead and add 25 red, 25 orange. Ooh. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring down my blues. And I'm just dragging that little pen right there, dragging it onto the wall, pulling it down, pulling it down. Okay. So maybe like minus 15, minus 16. This pink is a little too dark. I'm going to brighten my magenta. Purple. Ooh. I like my purple a little brighter, apparently. There we go. And then reds, right? We're going to brighten our reds, brighten our oranges, brighten our yellows. Okay? Because we want those colors of the skin to be brighter, and we want the background blues to be darker. Okay. We're going to color grade this one here in a second. So for here, I'm going to go to my dark water preset again. Again, it's adding blue. It's getting rid of a little bit of red, but it's going to darken it. See how this water back here is nice and blue? I want the floor to match. So it's going to drag up from the bottom. Okay. Just to kind of even out those blues. So now it's kind of one solid color of blue. I think that's a little bit more visually pleasing. The other thing that I would do is spot remove these vents. Ooh. Yay, Lightroom doesn't know what to pick on a spot removal. It never does. It's always just a shrug emoji. But I think getting rid of some of those easy visual distractions is a small, easy thing to do to give your photos more impact, right? That one. So there's 4 of them here that I'm going to get rid of. Okay. And I think using that little spot removal tool, just that little bit really helps focus your eye back to Marissa and less to the things in the pool. It's starting to feel more like an ocean or a grotto just by removing some of the things that would identify it as such. Okay. All right, let's look at color grading. I think this is a great example for color grading. So my midtones, let's add some more orange and red, right? We can kind of pull that in. Yeah, just a little bit. Okay. Now for shadows, I probably want my shadows to be blue, right? We want that water to look even more blue, more shadowy. Okay, because that's kind of where my levels are. Yeah. And then for my highlights, right, the things that are the brightest, I don't know, let's play. Let's just kind of look around. Maybe yellow, maybe a little bit of, like right between yellow and green. Yeah, that kind of looks smoother now, doesn't it? I think it's a smoother rendition for underwater. We're going to increase our blending all the way. Yeah, and then for balance, right? So balance, we can say, hey, skew to highlight color to the right. If we go to the left, it's skew blue to the left in this case, right? So if we did balance all the way to the left, a lot bluer. I kind of like that. All the way to the right, yellows. It's getting a little too yellowy. So maybe we're just going to skew a little bit to that blue side. Boom. Okay, so this is a softer version, more of a cinematic feel, less about being super contrasty. The thing I might do again is run that dark water again as a radial and really kind of enhance, right, and just drag that right to her head and then rotate it for the shape. And now I kind of like this. I like this better than the first time I did it. But I think this has a much more water feel where the pink of the tail, the brightness of the skin really stands out more than just by itself. So again, profile corrections just as a way. The other thing I might do, see this water in the tail, I really want to play up those bubbles. So I might do something like a clarity gradient tool just to really kind of make those water bubbles and that energy right there kind of pop off a little bit. So we can add a little dehaze, a little clarity as a way to kind of make that pop a little bit more. Yeah. So again, let's go to the very beginning, right? So these are all the adjustments I made. Boom. We can go. Let's go back all the way to the beginning. Ready? See where we started. See how flat that looks. The colors just aren't right. It's too green. It's too yellow. And so a lot of what we did was dealing with individual color, individual to there. Wow. Big difference. Look how her skin is the brightest thing in the pool now. And so she pops off those blues because her skin is red and orange. So it contrasts very nicely against the blues and aquas of the water. Yeah? Yeah. Now, I talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but let's say we wanted to make a big print. I just want to remind y'all that this is the new feature, right? This was shot on a 5D4, so it's already 30 meg, pretty big. If we wanted to make this like crazy dimensions, right click, enhance, and that's going to double our dimensions left and right and double our dimensions up and down. And so that'd give us like 120 meg file if we had to make like a super huge print. Just remember that that's there. That's one of the newest features in Lightroom, especially shooting with my 20 megapixel R6. I'm starting to use that for some of my bigger prints. It does a pretty good job of resizing at the raw level, and it'll keep getting better. Yeah, so what Lightroom questions, did anybody come with some Lightroom questions for today or underwater questions for today? Look, it's me again. Well, type your questions in. I'm going to tell you something else that's going to happen. I'll be writing a post on our Patreon page tomorrow, but after we go hang prints for a photo club. But Next Tuesday is going to be Josh Says Mean Things, and it is going to be a super special, awesome version of Josh Says Mean Things because it's going to be our first one filmed in front of a live studio audience. I confirmed with the three-legged goat today there in Pflugerville, and we are going to attempt to live stream from the three-legged goat, and it's going to be awesome. I'm very excited about it, so make sure and start getting your photos ready. I would resize after edit, Steven, to answer your question. I would resize after because I might crop in or do something like that. So I would resize, I would enhance at the very end. Yeah. So yeah, start getting your photos ready, start submitting them, send me an email. Y'all know where my email is. I'm not going to type in the comments because I'll get spam, but you know my email. It's easy to find me. It's Josh at my website. So get your Says Mean Things submissions in, and then plan next Tuesday the 20th at 7:30 p.m. We're actually going to get there a little bit earlier, maybe like 6 p.m., and maybe have a drink. We might actually see some people have a drink and have a little happy hour before the show. And then we're going to have a camera on the audience. We'll have a live studio audience. And I'm very excited about that. It's going to be the rest of this week for me trying to figure out just how to make all that happen technically. Hopefully we don't have any issues, but I'm sure we will because it's live TV, y'all. Never work with pets or animals. Never work on live TV. I'm going to break all the rules. What auto... Oh, good question. Matt, I'm guessing your question is for underwater. Yeah, for moving subjects, anytime moving subjects, that's going to be a AI servo, right? We don't want a one shot. We want a continuous autofocus. So that's kind of the first part of that, right? Equation. We want to make sure that we're in the servo modes of our autofocus. And then secondarily, I tend to have single point and my center point. Now, why that? Because my original underwater housing was with a Canon 5D Mark II, and holy moly, it is not good with anything other than the center point. So I just learned how to shoot without underwater, so that's what I do. I shoot a little wide and then crop in if I need. But I really want... So we rented the housing for this 5D4 because what I really want is a housing for my R6 and to be able to put under face detect or human detect underwater and just let it track. And I think in that way it would track all over the screen instead of just center point because that limits your compositions, right? If the center of your screen is the only thing you can put in focus, it kind of limits. So I usually just aim for people's like center mass and put the center point button of autofocus on that. And if you notice most of my photos, right, it's right there on her hip. And so I do miss, but I try to aim for center mass right at the hips because those don't move as much as faces and arms. Now, for when I go to my mirrorless housing, I will definitely be going to, either an R5 or an R6 for underwater next year. Once the housings come out, they're not out yet. But that way I'll be able to use face detect, autofocus tracking, servo mode on the new Canon mirrorless. And I'm pretty excited about that. Bill, I will definitely know if you can help with the live stream. Yeah, we have a couple people that are willing to help. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I got to figure out exactly how that's going to work. But it'll be fun. It'll be fun. So I hope to see a whole bunch of people there. I just want to see everybody. That's really my part. Yeah, iClight coming for the R5 in a couple weeks. Yeah, when I did the shoot, Lens Rentals didn't have one to rent yet, and so I wish it did. But yeah, if it was an iClight with an R5, I would put it in. If I was shooting a human, I would put it in face detect and just let it track the body, and that's going to give you a lot more screen coverage. The SLRs, right, the non-mirrorless cameras, the old school DSLRs, they're a little bit more limited. You can't really use live view underwater. It's just not as good as looking to the viewfinder, and it's hard to compose with the viewfinder. So both being able to use the viewfinder for shooting and having the autofocus be at the same rate, yeah, the mirrorless underwater is really going to be a big dream. So that's next on the list is an iClight housing. I'm probably just going to get the 50 DL port because I don't ever dive under 50 feet, so I don't really need the big 200. But then underwater strobes is the next part of that. So next summer we'll have underwater strobes to play with, but that's a whole nother ball of wax that I wasn't ready to get into this weekend because I hadn't shot underwater in so long. Yeah. Any other questions for y'all? Anything else I can help y'all with? Any Lightroom questions? Look, I even wore a polo for you today. Look, I'm all dressed up. Yeah. Oh, also, I should mention that on the Mermaid post on the Patreon, sometimes, I don't know if y'all use this or not, but I exported my Mermaid presets. And so if you want to download them, it's the attachment on the Mermaid post. And so you can download that XMP file. Matt, send me an email. I'll send it to you. But that way you can import it and see exactly what changes I made. So you can bring in my exact preset that I used, that I created for underwater. We good? Good. Awesome. Matt, send me an email. It's josh@azulux.com. And I'll send you that preset. I'll send you a couple of them. Anyway, thanks for watching this episode of Learn Lightroom Live. I think it was a fun one, right? A little different. I don't know what we're doing next month. We'll figure something out. I'll let y'all know. I'll post y'all, keep y'all posted for Lightroom, see what happens. Maybe there's a new Lightroom update coming or something. You never know. Probably in October, though. But yeah, otherwise, we'll see y'all next week for Josh Says Mean Things, live and in person. Great talking with y'all. See y'all soon.